Really happy to be joined right now by a recurring guest we've had here on Matchpoint Canada. Definitely someone I would call a friend of our podcast. Many of you know him on social media as @tweetsbyJP. Jonathan Pinfield, our favorite tennis reporter from Yorkshire. Welcome back to Matchpoint Canada.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Good to see you again.
You too, my friend. How you been keeping through all of these past 3 months?
Yeah, not too bad. I think I'm pretty fortunate. The situation in the UK isn't too great right now. I've been working from home the last 10 weeks, as well as working for live sports. I also work for a local radio station, so I'm just making sure that all the programmes that our presenters record at home are getting onto the airwaves, which they are more often than not. So for the main part, at home, trying to get a bit of daily exercise. Haven't picked up a racket in anger yet, but anyone who's ever seen me attempt to play tennis will say that's a good thing.
Yeah, they'd say the same about me too. I went out for the first time a few days ago, and it wasn't pretty. So I was happy there was another couple of people waiting after 30 minutes to get me out of there. Today's Sunday, and it would have been the finals at Roland Garros, which is, if not your favorite, certainly one of your favorite tennis tournaments. How much have you missed being there and watching that fantastic tournament unfold over the past 2 weeks, as we would have been doing?
Well, I think everyone misses tennis, whatever it is on the Grand Slams are the highlights of the year. Living in Europe, the notion of being able to travel to Australia is slightly beyond me. But the possibility to go to Paris is something that's been made possible for me over the last couple of years. And as you just said there, to think that, over recent days, you just think, wow, a couple of years ago, last year, I was watching this player, I was chatting to that player, I was doing this, I was doing that. Yeah, it brings back some fond memories, and I think it doesn't matter whether you're a player, a journalist, a fan, just someone who loves tennis. We're all missing it right now. We don't have all the answers, but certainly lots of people asking lots of questions.
It's interesting because I don't think one would normally equate someone from Yorkshire with the French Open, but you've developed certainly a rapport and a relationship with the tournament over the past 2 years. And it all started, for those who aren't familiar, or at least to the best of my knowledge, with your first press conference with Alexander Sasha Zverev. And you guys just seemed to hit it off right away and have a connection. And you brought out, I think, a side of him that a lot of people hadn't necessarily seen up to that point. Is it fair to say that the French Open occupies a very special place and always will in your heart because of what happened there 2 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a special moment when you're working there. You're trying to watch a bit of tennis, you're trying to attend news conferences, you're trying to make sure that your colleagues back home get the audio that you've recorded, and then you're on to the next one. So the incident that you talk about with Sasha Zverev, where I asked him a question, he didn't quite understand it. It was lost in translation a bit. As I said quite a few times, I like to think we made it up through the universal language of tennis and love. But yeah, I came out of that not thinking too much of it, but quite soon it built up a momentum all of its own. And after the one-off exchange, which was just some jovial banter, we certainly built up a big rapport throughout Roland Garros that year, and through the subsequent times I've had the opportunity to interview him. So yeah, special memories and special times, and yeah, something that you can't necessarily plan, not expected. As I said, at the time it happened, I didn't think too much of it. It was just on to the next news conference. But yeah, 24 hours later, had my 15 minutes of fame, and that gives me the opportunity to do things like this now. So I'm very grateful for it, absolutely.
Did you have anything special planned for the third installment if you had been there this year? And I mean, hopefully it could still happen in the fall, but anything in particular, or like you said, you can't really create these moments, you just sort of see how things would evolve naturally?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of how I approach these things, sometimes I do think long and hard about what I can ask a particular player. Sometimes it's almost like divine intervention. Some things come to me, some things work, some things don't. But I'm always prepared to roll the dice. And the incident with Sasha Zverev was quite interesting because initially the story was very much about an issue that was lost or a chat that was lost in translation, but very quick in terms of tennis fans. In their hearts, it was seen as the emergence of a bromance. And so the story flipped on its head from, do these guys understand each other, to, is there a bit of banter, is there a bit of flirting, is there a bromance going on here? So I actually realised in terms of the tone of my questions and in terms of how Sasha was responding to that, that's what I needed to do to strike up that rapport with him. Thankfully it worked. So there was certainly a bit of planning in terms of what went on some of the subsequent questions that year, but a lot of it is just the first thing that pops into my head. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's just plain daft. But yeah, sometimes you get some good answers. Sometimes you fall flat on your face, but you've just got to dust yourself down and crack on with it, as we say here in Yorkshire.
But sometimes you strike gold and it's so worth it. And in the media, it's kind of expected that there's a certain level, obviously, of professionalism and an unbiased approach to our work. It's not like you're in the stands cheering for Zverev when he's winning points and whatnot. But, you know, I've become conditioned myself to not clapping when I'm at, a tennis event anyways, which is the sport that I cover. And not outwardly or even really internally feeling too much bias towards a player as I did when I was a fan. Even a few years ago, I attended the US Open with my dad just for fun, the two of us, sort of a father-son bonding experience. And I still, even without press credentials, couldn't find myself clapping at any match. I'm just so conditioned to it. But that being said, there are moments where you develop a certain bond with a player. In your case, obviously, with Sasha through your press conferences. And there's nothing wrong with that either, is there?
No, I think it's a bit about having that mutual respect. You know, there's definitely a line, there's an air of professionalism that you've got to adopt, but, you know, you do have a genuine affection that you build up between yourself and certain players. There are other players where you just don't seem to be able to click, or you don't get the responses that you want from them. And I think that's just an accepted part. And I think colleagues who I work alongside at Roland Garros understand, for example, the relationship that I've built up with Sasha Zverev. They're looking for angles there for their stories as well. So, yeah, it is a balance. There are moderators in each of the news conferences making sure that there is that professional respect between yourselves and the competitors. And I like to think I haven't trodden too much over that line. I've certainly tiptoed on it, and a tightrope walked in it once or twice, I suppose.
Well, I don't know if it would work for everybody, but it certainly works for you. And one thing I've always enjoyed about your coverage is you bring that air of levity into the press room, which, let's be honest, it can be a pretty stale environment sometimes if it's just the same questions about forehands and backhands and that sort of thing. I think you put athletes at ease. I think you make them really comfortable, and it allows for them to reveal a side of themselves that their fans, and this is really what it's all about, is the fans who are reading or listening to the press conferences and the transcripts. You're showing a different side of these players that people don't necessarily know at, and it's not just humor. It's also, you got that Yorkshire accent that certainly plays to your advantage, and you've got a knowledge of the sport, and I think that's very important too. That it's not just the accent and a little bit of playfulness, but you know the sport, and players respect that from you as well. There's got to be a little room for some humor in journalism too, to help us get these moments that otherwise would go completely unnoticed, and we wouldn't know players except for the X's and O's on the court.
Well, it's really kind of you to say. Thanks very much. I'm going to scribble that down and use that as an endorsement somewhere. I think. But yeah, I think there's a couple of things from my point of view. I think you've got to play to your strengths as a journalist. It's got to be an extension of your personality. One of the biggest criticisms, of modern day tennis is that we don't see the players express their personalities enough on or off the court. And as a journalist, and I am a fan at the same time, when I go into the press box, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have an extension of my personality, and as you just said there, build up a bit of a rapport with the players, the human beings. They have frailties like us. They have, different personalities. You've got to find out what makes them tick. Some players just want to talk about tennis and their game, nothing off the court. Some players are very bored about talking about the actual tennis and, happy to talk about things that affect them in their lives or things they're doing off the course or show different aspects of the personality. And you've got to try and learn that in quite a competitive environment where lots of people want to ask questions, lots of people are looking for bylines as well. But if you can see something on the court, if you can see something in someone's personality, if you can relate to something that they've done or said and bring that to life, and as I keep saying, take those chances, then sometimes it pays off. And as I said, not everything's going to work, but if you keep plugging away, sometimes you get, in my case, what I call some real radio gold.
Who are some players that you've had a difficult time cracking, whether it was just they were having a bad day at the office, or, as you said, some players who aren't as keen to talk about or reveal their personalities? Are there one or two players where you've tried to work a certain angle and they just haven't, had any of it?
Well, as you know, I've got quite a broad Yorkshire accent, so I'm always a bit self-conscious that are people understanding me? And I think once or twice I've just asked the question and they haven't particularly understood it, so they're just giving me a stock response. But I think that there are certain players, either recently retired players or players still on the circuit, that are guarded because there's a bit of a mistrust by of the media in general. They're wondering if you're trying to work an angle. They don't always want to reveal too much of themselves. There are one or two high-profile players where I've gone in there with good intentions and asked questions which have either just fallen completely flat, or you don't necessarily get anything from. They're obligated by the tour organisers and, in the case of Roland Garros, by the media team there to attend a news conference for 10 minutes. Some people love it. Some are like, Novak Djokovic can spend 10 minutes just answering one question. He actually loves chatting. For some people, if English isn't the second language, or they've been on the tour 10 years, they've answered every question. I think the biggest challenge for me and for most journalists on the tour is what to ask Rafa Nadal. He just wins every game there, and he feels like he's answered every question. And even in the final, there's a bit of a joke before the final news conference where we say, right, Rafa, are you ready? And he basically says, I've answered every question, but I'll answer it again. So, that can be a challenge just insofar as, he's one guy who at Roland Garros, hardly ever seems to lose. But, there are other people who you just see glimpses of the personality. And I actually really enjoy interviewing, for example, Simona Halep. She always has a glint in her eye. She always gives very honest answers. Other people say about Dominic Thiem isn't the biggest personality. When I look back at some of the interviews that I did last year in the media conference, some of the best responses, and probably the best response I got, were from Dominic Thiem. And after he lost the final last year against Rafa Nadal, I overheard that when he came off the court, he'd said that he'd won the previous day, beat Novak Djokovic, which was an unbelievable win. And I heard in passing that he'd said it felt like within the space of 24 hours, he'd gone from tennis heaven to tennis hell. And I actually asked him what that felt like. And he gave such an insightful answer. And again, that was something that I saw covered everywhere. And that was the headline, Dominic Thiem says he's gone from tennis heaven to hell within 24 hours. So, yeah, I like a laugh, I like a joke, but every now and again you can ask a question that just gets a great answer. And some of them aren't planned, some of it, is just good luck.
And there's a time and a place, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to judge the mood in the room. You've got to judge the player, and just do your best. And all the questions I ask, are generally supportive of the players. I never want to be overcritical. I might spot something in a game or something about someone's temperament or personality that I want to ask them about, but I never feel like it's attacking. Again, another incident last year was Naomi Osaka, who burst onto the scene, had an unbelievable start to her career, you know, just didn't perform as she wanted to at Roland Garros, went into the news conference, very short and sweet answers. She didn't want to be there, and the approach from a lot of the people in the media room was to persist with a line of questioning where she just wasn't comfortable answering it. And I asked quite a benign question, to be honest. It wasn't a particularly good one or particularly insightful one. It was just something that came off the top of my head, and I basically just said to Naomi, you know, what would make you feel better right now? And again, that just gave her the opportunity just to open up. And that's when she said, to be honest, the best thing I can do is just get on a plane and get out of here. And then she just spoke for a couple of minutes about how she'd been feeling over the last few weeks. She hadn't settled in Paris. She was missing her home comforts. She just needed to go home, regroup, you know, and just reassess some things. It wasn't a great question, yeah, but the way that I phrased it just gave her the opportunity to say what she wanted to say. And again, it was a bit of good luck, but, you know...
yeah, we need that too, don't we?
That was a great answer. Yeah, absolutely, every time, yeah. Don't get
and because for every great question you have or I have, you know, it's always tempered with the ones that we wish we hadn't asked or that you don't get that result. But if you don't try, you're not going to get anything, right? So I take the same sort of approach as you when I'm in a press conference, and you know, if it doesn't work, that's okay. You shrug your shoulders and realize that maybe it's just not their day, and you move on to the next one. If I can get back to Sasha Zverev for a moment, because I consider you one of the foremost experts on him, if not on the court, certainly off of it. How have you witnessed him change over the 2 years you've gotten to know him, both in terms of on the court, but also what he's like off the court?
He's always been a very self-assured character, as we know. Some people have said that he's confident or arrogant, and I was really pleased that the first few times I got the opportunity to chat to him at Roland Garros, he expressed the side of his personality that other people haven't seen before. Everyone knows he's got amazing tennis skills, that isn't in question. Last year was a difficult year for him off the court and on the court. He dealt with a number of things and put them behind him. I got the opportunity to watch him play at the ATP finals in London in December, where he got through to the semi-finals. Looked like he was in good form. Then he started off this year again in indifferent form. He subsequently said that he feels like he might have had, you know, COVID-19 or coronavirus because his early season form was affected. Then, you know, he had a great performance, his best performance yet at a slam at the Australian Open, getting to the semi-finals. He was settled in his personal life off the court. He had a new management team with Roger Federer's management team behind him in a stable relationship. You know, he's always had a good family unit. And so we thought, right, okay, is he building up a bit of momentum here? Yeah. And then tennis came to a halt. So it's difficult to judge, really. You know, I've seen his personality up close. He likes a laugh. He likes a joke. He's got a trusted team around him. He's got a couple of people on the tour who we trust implicitly, which is really good. As we've said, he's now got a stable personal life, which he's happy to share with us all on social media, which is showing a different aspect to his personality. So the question is really, you know, in terms of all the tools that he's got in his locker, can he put them together, you know, and take it to the next level? At the moment, those questions are beyond us because we don't even know when we're going to see any tennis yet. But, you know, for the likes of Sasha Zverev, Dominic Thiem, you know, Stefanos Tsitsipas, you know, Medvedev, that's the first time I've probably said his name correctly, but I kept getting pulled on that Roland Garros. You know, there's some exciting players out there, and, you know, he's definitely in the mix. I suppose the other question is whether, you know, this enforced break has done a bit of good and might even sustain the careers of Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal, because, you know, after Roger Federer announced he was having surgery, everyone says, well, that's it, he's going to be out of the top for the best part of half the year, he's going to slip down the rankings. It's now proved perfect timing. So
Always works
I've
out
not
for those
answered
little
any
guys,
of your
doesn't it?
questions there. I've not answered any of your questions, but I've certainly thrown up a lot more questions for tennis fans to think about. But we're all debating them every week at the moment, aren't we?
Ben and I were talking recently about if the French Open does indeed happen at the end of September, beginning of October, and who knows at this point really how likely that is, but what the different dynamic will be having that event held in the fall and having it held without the usual clay court lead up of the different 5 6 weeks or more than that even of clay court tournaments. How do you think that will impact? And you spoke about Rafa and his dominance there earlier. How do you think that might impact him? Do you think this might give those other younger players that you just mentioned as good an opportunity as ever to dethrone this guy?
Well, I can't necessarily answer the question just because it's all still, up in the air. I think the biggest, the fascinating thing to me at the moment is what's going to happen out in the USA. We look at where the major tennis tournaments are held. Australia's been largely unaffected, touch wood, from what we can see externally. London, Paris, New York, where Wimbledon, the US Open, and Roland Garros are held, three major capital cities, are three of the biggest, Grand Slams out there, and they're the tennis tournaments that are going to be affected. So there's talk that there's going to be a hard court season in America with the Southern and Western playing just before the US Open. If that's the case, if the US Open does go ahead, and we don't know under what circumstances it will, Novak Djokovic has basically come out and said he doesn't think a lot of elements are unpractical from a player's point of view, but will players have to make a choice between playing the US Open or Roland Garros? Is it practical for them to play at the US Open and then travel to Roland Garros? Are players going to be allowed to travel? Will the media be allowed to go? Will there be some sort of opportunities for fans to go or play behind closed doors? So I'm not answering your question about Rafa Nadal, A, because I don't know, and B, because I think there's just so many questions that we just don't know the answers to. That I think if the US Open and or Roland Garros goes ahead, it's just something that we just don't know right now. And one of the other big talking points I'm seeing on social media is, what is the value in having major sporting events and tennis tournaments without the spectators? That's another big question, and it'd be interesting to see what tennis fans think. Whether they'd like to see the Grand Slams without fans, or whether they should only go ahead if fans are let into the stadiums.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take whatever I can get at this point. I'm so starved for watching live sporting events. It's great watching some of the old classics, and I saw the tweet of Bjorn Borg for his birthday you put out yesterday with your matching outfit from the French Open, and I've watched some of those classics. I'm currently reading Pete Sampras's autobiography for the second time, which is fine, but it's nothing like watching live sports and seeing new history being made. And so obviously has to be done in a safe way. And we don't know if that's going to be possible or not, but whether there's spectators or not, I'll take just about anything I can get. It's going to be really sad from a tennis perspective. I mean, there's obviously bigger things going on in the world right now that are truly deplorable. But from a tennis perspective, when the dates for Wimbledon do come up later this month, early July, that's going to hit me as a tennis fan more than any other tournament, I think, because that's the one I grew up watching. I would imagine for you, obviously, being over in the UK and for your fellow tennis fans there, that's going to be a real tough one too, knowing already that that's not happening this year.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I grew up watching Wimbledon. I go down every year as a fan, and I join the queue just like everyone else. And it's an amazing experience. The only thing that we can take from that as Brits is, at the moment, we're just coming out of lockdown. Some shops are opening, and the first thing that you've got to do is queue. And as you know, everyone thinks that that's a British pastime anyway. So I won't be in the Wimbledon queue this year, but I'll certainly queue in, day out to try and get in somewhere. But yeah, it's going to be weird to think that there's no Wimbledon this year. We are looking at staging a domestic competition for some of the up and coming players. I think it's going to be called the Prospects Tour. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. But yeah, nothing is going to fill the void for me of Wimbledon being cancelled this year.
Of course. Are you hoping, if the French Open does get held in the fall, are you hoping that you'd be able to attend if press and media are invited?
Yeah, I've thought about this. And again, it's a tricky one. Obviously, we've got to be healthy. It's got to be safe. There's got to be travel arrangements in place, which there aren't at the moment. The current regulations for the UK is that if you go out of the UK for any reason, and it's very difficult to do that at the moment for a number of reasons, you've got to self-isolate and quarantine for 14 days when you come back. I would suspect if the media are given the opportunity to be at Roland Garros this year, that it will be effectively pared down, and they will only have a handful of reporters, and so you might have reporters covering for particular nations, basically. So on that basis, I'm a one-person outfit working for a relatively small radio station. If you look at the global reach of tennis, it's a bit of a busman's holiday for me when I go. So it might be that there are very few opportunities for media to go along, if any. And on that basis, I probably won't make that cut, and I can completely understand why, because I think I've got to hold my hands up and say, as much as I love it and enjoy it, there's people a lot better qualified than I am to cover it. But if they want someone who can liven things up a bit and ask a few left field questions, if I got the opportunity, I'd definitely be there. I'd like to think that I could be there, but I'm realistic enough to know that it might not happen next year, but definitely looking forward to getting back there sometime.
Well, you have my vote, absolutely, and many of our listeners as well, who enjoy when you stop by and breathe some fresh air into our podcast and change up the accent, the typical Canadian accents that we get over here. And who knows, maybe if we can't attend it live, we'll see each other in a Zoom press conference for Sasha Zverev, and I know your rapport with him will come across just as well there as it does in the real world. So, hey, look, all the best first and foremost as things do start to open up. All the best for you, your family and friends, and I hope people in Yorkshire are staying safe and being smart about it. As here in Toronto, I sometimes wonder if people aren't leaping ahead too quickly. But it's great to talk to you again, Jonathan Pinfield from Yorkshire, our favorite Sasha Zverev correspondent. And thank you for stopping by and talking with me today.
Thanks, Mike. It's always a pleasure. I know that you get great guests on the podcast every time you do one, so I hope I don't disappoint too much. But always good to catch up with you. We keep promising each other that beer at Roland Garros sometimes. So you're getting the first round, and I'm a Yorkshireman. I'm keeping my money in my pocket, but looking forward to that drink.
Okay, man. We'll talk soon then. Take care.